welcome to this week's episode of MarTech Unraveled. We are joined by a guest all the way from the Netherlands, and we will be tackling the topic of the MarTech Stack, designing and driving value from your organization stack. Our guest today is Frans Riemersma, founder of MarTech Tribe. Frans is a leading MarTech expert, researcher, and speaker. He did found the MarTech Tribe, where he helps brands optimize technology stacks. He co-authored key MarTech reports on composability and Gen AI. He also lectures at a Dutch business school and university, where he shapes industry insights through research, consulting, and speaking at global events. Welcome to the podcast, Frans.
Thank you so much, Fiona, for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We had previous conversations and I loved it. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's dive right into it. And, let's take a, wide lens view and really start to define what exactly is a MarTech stack.
That's a very good one. And it's actually, in my mind, also changing. I will explain. A MarTech stack, simply put, is a set of tools, a set of solutions, software packages that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is it shifting? Because, solutions, software packages are sets of features. And what I see in my research is that people don't use the full suite or a full package. They use bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a set of features, you might argue. What do you think?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Especially, as you said, it's a set of features because a lot of software, organizations purchase large software and only tend to use about 30%, 40%. But I'm sure we'll get into the details of that as well later in the podcast. So I recently read a really interesting article on the MarTech Tribe. Very well written and very funny, yet candid. The article was called A MarTech Manifesto, 4 Guiding Principles to Design a MarTech Stack. It talks about the pitfalls that organizations experience when investing in their MarTech stack and gives, 4 pragmatic principles to get MarTech adoption right. Tell us a bit more about this article and the 4 principles.
Yeah. So basically what I learned is that in software demos and software selections, there are multiple people in the room from the client side, and they speak different languages. So I wanted somehow to unify that language and see, okay, where do we start with deciding what software solves our problem, right? So there are 4 elements in a manifesto. It starts with people, and then process, and then features, and then integrations. It starts with people. That's very important. And it doesn't start with the user, which I often hear. Very important. Users can make or break things, but it starts with the customer. And very often we forget about the customer experience. So, and I've seen decision making happening in those demos where admins of tools say, yeah, but that's too much work. That would take me, like 5 minutes to render an Excel sheet or whatever, or an output. Whereas the client would then have to wait a minute. So for that person not to wait 5 minutes, but it's about the client. So I was like, we got our priorities wrong. So let's make a very simple, a cheat sheet, which is the manifesto, that you can use in those kind of demos. And it says simple things like, in those manifestos you've seen with Agile, it says, customers over users and then front-end users over back-end users and back-end users over, and there you go. So that's how we unpack it. And I really hope that we can then prioritize the customer first, because I've seen so many cases. Well, life is too short to remove the USB stick safely, right? So why do we put up with workarounds from software vendors that we, have to work around, or even our customers have to work around? So that's why I wrote the MarTech Manifesto.
Okay. So if I delve in a little bit more on that, when you say, put the customer first, you're talking about the customer that an organization is trying to serve, correct?
Yes, correct. Because in the end, we talk about MarTech, marketing technology. And I'm co-publisher of the MarTech map, right? The marketing technology super graphic, now containing 14,106 tools and counting.
Yeah.
And what you really want to know is which one should I use first and which one later, and zoom in on the right features. And that is something, again, with the MarTech Manifesto, I'm missing.
Okay. So you talked about customer. Now let's talk about process.
Yes. So with the customer, sorry, and to finish my previous answer, what is important about the customer is that ultimately with marketing technology, there's also in the super graphic sales tech, there's also customer support tech. They all face the customer. And all too often we forget about that. So in the old days, we had ERP, right? Enterprise resource planning, all that kind of warehousing logistics. That is all software that's not concerned with the customer. So there we do focus on the user experience, our employees, right? They have to be comfortable. But that we cannot migrate that principle 101 to customer technology, marketing, sales, and customer success. So that's why I put the customer first and then reverse engineer. Then, when you know what is important for the customer and for your users, then you come to the process. So, which process is first? And all too often, we try to boil the ocean. I see many times they say, but it has to do everything. A software tool cannot solve all our problems, just like a car. There are cars for speed, there are cars for heavy load, and everything in between. So what is it we want? I want it all. I know, but it's not there. And maybe if you have a very, a fast car that also needs a heavy load, it will cost a fortune because that is a very difficult combination. And that yet in software, we don't prioritize and just ask for the moon. And that's not always working. So that's why we put the process in place. Which processes first? And there's a simple trick to find out which process is first. What can you switch off? What if we don't do it? What will break? What revenue will we not get? And that's it. And then you suddenly see that the sun will shine instead of trying to boil the ocean all the time.
I like that. I like that. In a way of prioritizing, if you were to switch it off, will it break? Will the wheels fall off? Or will the customer not be served? That's a great way to, answer that question. What do we actually need? So
100%.
So we've done customer, we've done process. Then you talked about, was it features was the next one?
Correct. And that's why we talk about, this, you have this conversation about best of suite, breed, and that kind of stuff, best of feature. Recently, I updated the manifesto in a LinkedIn post because somebody came up with the idea of best of need. And that again starts with the customer. So I think, don't buy a tool or a suite to solve everything, because what you're actually doing is not making a decision. It's more a fear of missing out. So what are you really needing? So have the courage to say, okay, we're making a decision here. If we don't cater for this process or these feature sets, what will break? Nothing? Okay, then let's make it simpler, cheaper, and also faster to deploy. It's also helping your speed to value, as I call it. Make sure you get most value out of it as soon as possible. And that is with best of features. So which features do you really, really need? And I have one very extreme example in my own consultancy life, where for one customer, we had to work on two buttons, not the 5 or 12 modules they were offering. Two buttons that made a difference of $1.2, $1.3 million a year. So it's best of feature that serve a best of need, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, I really like what you're saying. And I wonder if, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but is this where, the concept of composability comes in, when it comes to, best of feature and so on?
Yes, 100%. I like you're touching now the subject of composability, because I wrote the MarTech Manifesto not necessarily with composability in mind. It was not really a big thing back then, but you're spot on. It is absolutely about that. Also, if you take the last part of the manifesto about integrations, we have APIs, great, but you have to go to IT, and they're flooded with work, and we are more in marketing experimenting with stuff. So why are we bothering them with small, jobs that they don't have time for? They have to be concerned with the infrastructure for the long term, and we do short term, track. So then you have integration platform as a service, which is more plug and play. Some stuff we can do ourselves, and then even native integrations between two tools that you're using, and have a native integration directly, and you can plug and play and try it out. So I think that is also a better way of doing things, and that brings the composability into play. And there's another thing. We started with the conversation like, Stack is a set of software, but maybe it's a stack of features. So features become more and more important, and that they are at the foundation of composability. And if you think about it, I'm a marketer, but I'm also a coder. If you code, you use a library, a plugin, a Node.js, or you use cascading styles here, whatever. And that you put together. So the very nature of technology is composability. But for some reason, to sell it to non-techies, we said it's a software and it solves all your problems. And it doesn't. So I think we're coming back to the true nature of technology, which is composability. And I think AI and Gen AI is only propelling the composability idea. So that is another thing. Composability is not a strategy. It's the nature of technology.
That is really, really interesting, because I think it's really changing the thinking around, how organizations should adopt, marketing technology solutions. However, I wonder, the composability discussion, how does it go with vendors? What's been your experience in terms of like vendors? Are they as well adopting a composable stack? How are they going to market? Because a lot of the times they go with, here's our solution, buy the whole thing. But you need vendors to have thought of, this composability concept and seeing that, how do we service the need by giving bits and pieces as needed?
Yeah, well, since I started talking about composability, it's not like I have no work anymore. So vendors still invite me to do keynotes and big ones. And I really enjoyed it. They embrace the idea of composability. And they recognize that they cannot offer all the features that everybody needs. I mean, you cannot be everything to everybody. It's as simple as that. So they are starting to see, okay, but this is what we're good at, and this is outside our realm, and we have to, create integrations, native or other ways. And that is very important. So they're very realistic. I was a bit afraid of pushback, but nothing whatsoever. The only thing is what they also say is like, look, we have a suite, we have a bunch of modules that integrate really well. So basically you could say we are in nature a kind of composable stack. We just didn't allow ourselves to say it because our in the sales process, clients didn't want to hear it. But now they do, and people go like, oh, if you look at it, there's composable CMS, there's composable CDP now. High Touch just went to go IPO, stock listed. And it's all about composability. They even make their pricing composable. Oh, you want ID stitching? There's a separate price for that, and it's just that piece, and that piece is driving value. Now, a final comment, what is maybe counterintuitive, but we always thought that with a big suite, you can ask more money. But if you focus on one feature set that really drives a lot of value, you might even ask the same amount or even more, because it's value-based selling, value-based pricing.
Wow. Yep. Yeah, no, I think you're really touching on very key things that are really shaping the industry and shaping how, companies are looking for technology, buying technology, and, adopting technology for sure. I just on that topic again, and expanding on the composability survey that you did in 2024, The three key insights that you had from the survey, and you did talk about, the DNA of a MarTech stack. Maybe walk us through that as well. I think it's, to really tie up, this concept of composability and so on.
Yes. The three big insights I summarized as: consolidation is not a strategy, composability is not a strategy, focus on stack value. So let's unpack that. Consolidation is not a strategy. So when we release every year the MarTech map, and it tends to grow, the last 13 years in a row it grew from a couple of hundred to 14,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I always ask myself, what is the question behind the question? If people ask me, when will it consolidate? So why do you want the technology market to consolidate? It's almost like saying, we have so many restaurants, can we just reduce it to 2 or 3 and then we're good?
Yeah.
I mean, why? It's a wealth, of all flavors.
Mm-hmm.
But and you can chip in and say, I would like to go, with this restaurant today and tomorrow with a different kitchen, cuisine. So then I learned that people said, yeah, but I cannot manage it anymore internally. So I want a software vendor to consolidate the market, and we end up with 5 big players, and then I can just take one of the 5. Yeah, nice thinking. It's not how it works, unfortunately. So because all these big vendors are really good at supporting you with your core processes. But for pure experimentation, maybe you need that Gen AI tool that just surfaced 2 months ago, and you play around with it and you get a competitive advantage. Once you've done that, then you integrate it maybe in your mainstream best of suite software. So that is how consolidation, you should consolidate inside your company. And I would rather call it rationalize. I see, we do a lot of stack benchmarks with companies. Many companies have too much software because they don't deprecate it and they're not using it anymore. And so they don't have that real focus. That focus, and you touched upon it, like the DNA of the MarTech stack. It looks like a solar system, every stack. So you have, your core system, which is in B2B, normally your CRM or your marketing automation tool. And in B2C is normally your CDP and your cloud data warehouse. That does not mean that you don't have a CRM or a marketing automation tool as a B2C company. You do. It's just not leading. And leading means the rest of the stack is integrated with that piece of software. So you have your sun defined, and then you have some planets around it, like maybe your social or your collaboration tools. And then around those planets, you have some moon circling, smaller tools that you try out, your systems of innovation. So that is how the DNA plays out, like a solar system. And then you can consolidate and say, okay, but now this is really our core. We have some planets, but actually some are not inhabited anymore. So let's drop them and some moons, and let us replace that. And that is where the second one, composability is not a strategy, the second insight. I'm not saying it's not there. It is there. It is the nature of technology and the nature of stacks, but it's not a strategy. Just allow it to happen. And with your solar system approach, you can create a kind of a plug and play architecture. But you have to have somebody, an architect, somebody called it the other day, that, cleans it up every now and then. I had one client who was so brave, said, listen, from now on, every new piece of software, small or big, has to show us how we switch them off. So they are switching them on, but they know at some point in time, they will say goodbye to each other. So how do we unpack that? How do we deprecate? How do you hand over the users? How do you hand over the data? Yeah. So they said, basically, we only implement with deprecation in mind. I found that pretty brave, and that's true composability, and really keeping your stack lean and mean. Absolutely. And that's the second one. So far, so good.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Continue.
The third one, the third insight on composability was, we did a lot of research. We have now over 1,500 real-life stacks from real-life companies across 16 plus industries globally. And we started plunging ourselves into that and see what combinations do we see a lot, and how does this actually work. We also know how they work with those tools in terms of their maturity. So all these companies told us from a level 1 to 5, we're very proficient, we have some consolidation, or we're completely ad hoc. And so we started correlating that with the company value of those stack owners. So we looked at annual reports. I can tell you that was a lot of work. I was going to say not a nice job, but very rewarding, because we looked at all those numbers and we looked at, okay, what is the revenue per employee ratio for all these stack owners? And then see for every single piece of MarTech, if they increase their maturity, do we also see a correlation with revenue per employee, so company value? And to our surprise, two insights came up. One, you don't have to be very mature in every MarTech. That's one thing. But you can also increase your maturity and have a negative correlation with your company value. So in some cases, please don't invest in certain MarTech. And this really differs by industry. So the industry has a big impact on how you should shape your stack. So now we know where the correlation is very high. So where stack owners of very effective, the outperformers, so to speak, they know, okay, this piece of software is really important and we drive value with that. And with other pieces, maybe just deprecate it. And, we don't have the luxury to invest resources in those, what I call red MarTech. So it's a RAG MarTech, red, amber, green. And the green ones, if you invest, you will see a correlation with a better company value. With red, it's the opposite. And with amber, it's more like, make sure, because sometimes the sun of your DNA, your stack, is in that amber part. And so it's foundational. You need to have it, but don't overdo it. Put the basics in place, like a CRM, right? If that happens, and I think in banking it's amber. So if in banking, then make sure you have the foundation in place. You have everything clean in terms of data and contact data, link it to your ERP, transactional, that kind of stuff, and then leave it at that. No email, no sales forecasting. Do that in other tools. And this is not me. This is based on the research. So I hope that makes sense, explaining a little bit what stack value is.
Absolutely. No, this is really, really interesting. And I want to ask, within a team, who would be responsible for doing this, thinking through all of this. I'm curious, because I'm sure there's listeners out there thinking, we kind of need to improve on thinking through our MarTech stack. Who should be doing it?
Fantastic. There are three stakeholders that approach me and ask me to do this stuff. And they all have completely different goals. So first of all, there's IT, and often driven by finance. How can we remove MarTech? That is their question. And therefore, we have the red, MarTech. And they're right. There is redundancy in many stacks. At the moment, I think it's 99% that have redundancies. Okay, cool. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the green MarTech for marketers. So CMOs come to me and say, okay, what is the next big thing? What MarTech is really working? Because if you look at that MarTech, it also reveals a tactic and maybe a campaign that you could run, right? A type of campaign, a go-to-market strategy. So that's really bottom up. And by looking at tooling that outperformers use, you can say, hey, that's interesting. That gives them a competitive advantage. So they are looking for new ways of doing marketing just to get that, to meet their targets. And then you have the people in the middle, marketing ops, right? They are, between IT, they get marketing. We need to make money, but we also shouldn't overdo it in terms of tooling. And they have to constantly clean up and optimize, especially the core stack. So I'm talking about the sun and the planets in your stack. And that is what you see marketing ops teams. They come to me and said, pinpoint those tools, tell it to our marketing and IT people, and now we have focus. Because otherwise, we have to take every single request to our department on MarTech seriously. And we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, and we'll never ever have that because there are not enough people on the planet, to cater for all the needs of all the people. So those are the three people. And Basically, you could summarize it what I call always the hack, pack, and stack approach.
Mm-hmm.
Marketers hack, marketing operations people pack, they clean it up, and then you have the IT people that run the stack and make sure it's optimally performing. And that's in summary how the different stakeholders have different, and not conflicting, but different approaches.
Yeah, complementary. They have to play nice with each other.
100%. 100%. And if you explain this, or when I explain this to people, then suddenly IT goes like, so there isn't a shadow IT actually. It's IT those guys need to make sure we secure our future revenue, because they are, creating the revenue of the future. We, with our stack, we are securing the revenue of today. Don't touch it, right? And it has to be performant, no experiments, no tricks. But now we get why you're doing shadow IT. Now we need marketing ops people to deprecate the stuff you're not using anymore.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. I think that's super helpful for our viewers, our listeners, to know how to juggle and interface with different stakeholders who are all key to this whole puzzle.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for giving those tips on how to collaborate and who does what.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, oftentimes I joke that I'm in the business of noise canceling. There's so much noise, and we have to learn how to speak one language, because we don't have the luxury towards the client to screw up, bluntly put. So it's you see people work better together afterwards if they get okay, so that's your agenda, and it's not a hidden one, it's an open one, and you are concerned with the same customer, but in a different way, because your job title is different and you're supposed to be different. Okay, I get it. And then you can start working on your strategy, your roadmap, a blueprint. Yeah.
Love it. Noise canceller, right?
Yes.
Great. Maybe let me take you maybe 2 steps back, just on the measuring ROI of your MarTech stack. I know you talked about revenue per employee, and I think you talked about speed to value. Are those the 2, key metrics that would help an organization measure the ROI of their MarTech stack?
Yes. The thing is this, and we just spoke about IT and marketing. The thing is with IT, they're often reporting to CFOs. So they know what's making money and what is not today. They're not so concerned with what will make money in, the next 2-3 years. And are we still relevant? So how do we explain that? And the big problem is that if you look at ROI calculations, it's always looking at what money do we make today? But, a missed opportunity never shows up on a balance sheet. So how do we, calculate that? So it's a different calculation. And this is why we created this proxy metric, or this metric for stack value, where we can really see it differs by industry. And in some cases, for instance, we just did an industry report on membership stacks. So associations with members, but also maybe even Amazon Prime, right? They also have membership subscriptions. And one of the things, especially from the more UNICEF, World Nature Fund type of organizations, calling is very important, because you want to have a human connection. Now you might think, okay, so call analytics tools are really popular. Quite the opposite. They're not popular at all, because analytics makes it all too technical, makes it, you alienate yourself from the members. They don't call it customers. So, and that shows really, okay, now I understand why call analytics is not driving value in membership stacks. But maybe it is in account-based marketing type of environments. So that is very, very interesting to see those differences. And I hope with this stack value that we can now equip, and I don't hope it, I see it with my clients, that we sit together with marketing and go to IT, and then they go like, this is the first time we see a data-driven MarTech analysis with value to it, right? And it's not a pure calculation, but it's a very good indicator, like, let's not waste our time talking about red MarTech. I mean, that's already 1/3 of your stack less. Then there's the amber one. We have to make sure we strip it down to the core because that's business critical and driving most value. And then we can focus on the green stuff, the green MarTech. And that is how you can drive your future revenue and still be very agile and flexible.
Okay. You've mentioned a lot of amazing tools. The RAG model, the 4 principles of MarTech stacks. You've done extensive research for many, many years. I would love for you, to share more about the tools that you have available at MarTech Tribe for organizations and listeners who are listening now and wondering, he's talking about all these cool things that we really, really need. Where can I get them?
Yes, sure. So I'm a noise canceller, as you said earlier. What I have developed is 4 different MarTech audits. One is really the RAG, right? And that's more for the IT department and CFOs. So make sure that we don't have too many tools that we have to maintain and we don't have the resources for. So that's the red, amber, green. We have a different one that is really more for CMOs that are concerned, do I have the skill set of the future in my team and the right org chart? So there we look at competencies, because what we do is we look at the outperformers in your industry. We look at what tools they're using. We look at what feature sets sit in those tools. And then you get a pretty clear idea of, but these are the core capabilities that your team needs to have with a certain strategy. So all these benchmarks are just benchmarks, and we map them against your reality. And then you will quickly see, okay, this most applies to us, this doesn't. So that is the second audit on capabilities of the future. A third one is your funnel MarTech. So we can plot against a funnel, and it's not just the top, middle, and bottom of funnel, but also if you flip the funnel, it's also loyalty, retention, and churn, that kind of stuff. You can quickly see what tools in your stack are supporting which part of that stage. There are 9 stages in the funnel that we defined. And you can quickly see, okay, we're over equipped or under equipped in certain areas. And what do the outperformers do? And can we learn from that? Not copy it, learn from it. And maybe here and there mimic where suitable. So that's the funnel MarTech. And then, of course, we have the ideal stack audit, where you can just look at, okay, what is the ideal stack in our industry? And then start to see where you're behind. And there are always 3 cases. 1, you're missing MarTech. Second, you have the MarTech, but it's not really performing up to standards of the industry. Or you do have up to standards, and maybe your skills are behind. So you have to build skills. So those are the 4, audits that we do. And the beauty is, we want to have a quick turnaround time. So with only 15 questions, which is actually just submitting your stack. What tools are you using currently? Takes like 4 or 5 minutes to fill out, and within a day we can give you the report. So we really want to have a very quick turnaround time. Otherwise, it's taking too long. People need quick answers. They don't want to be involved too much with long processes around MarTech. They have to be concerned with the customer, the customer needs, not so much with the MarTech needs internally. So 15, questions, 4 minutes, 1 day. That's what we aim for and often deliver. Yeah.
Nice. And everyone can get back to work and servicing their clients and delivering value.
100%. Yeah. And that may sound strange, but in a way, I think MarTech is in our way. It's a part of MarTech is not helping us. I mean, I love MarTech. MarTech is super important and super great in helping us. But the discussion is so overwhelming, and there's so many opinions, and it gets pretty tense and emotional every now and then, that I thought, if you can cancel that noise and make it very simple and say, okay, that's a good opinion, but it's red MarTech. So can we have a conversation about the green MarTech? We have a problem here. And then everybody's focusing on the customer. And that's what I would like to see. We need to serve the customer. And now we're back to the first entry from the MarTech manifesto, I guess.
Absolutely. Wow, this is so practical. And I think I think MarTech discussions can feel intimidating, but I think with just the thinking behind, the research you've done, the tools, the audits, it makes it, just feel like doable and not so intimidating.
Yeah,
Now,
thank you for that. Yeah, that's what we've been trying to do, and it took some years, but now we're here. Yes.
awesome, awesome, awesome. As we close, I'd love to, look into your crystal ball, and with your extensive, research and of, how the MarTech industry has evolved, and where it's going. What are three trends? Although I don't want to use the word trends because you've been very clear as to, not to follow trends, but be very strategic and, action oriented and value oriented. But what are shifts that CMOs and those involved in MarTech decisions should be aware of? Maybe three you can highlight for us today.
Um, yeah, there, it's the composability, consolidation, all that kind of rationalization,
Mm-hmm.
all in one, maybe coming together in agentic AI, in agentic marketing, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a big shift happening at the moment. So we spoke about software and MarTech, right? Software helps humans to execute tasks. AI performs the tasks for the humans based on a prompt. So now the prompt becomes more prominent.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, what is your prompt? And the prompt should be normally about the customer. And I told you, and you explained that at the introduction, that I teach at business schools and universities. One of the first questions I always ask is, who's your customer? And how do you make money from them? You know, uh, no answer. Very often, no answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with AI, there's a big shift happening. There's no hiding behind software anymore. We have to come clean and say, okay, but this is my prompt. This is what the customer really wants. And if not, AI can even help you with finding, the intent of the customer so you can cater for their needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that will shift massively. So the whole focus, that is a big one. A second one is, I think stacks will look differently in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is agents, AI agents that can do certain jobs. If you talk about picking up a lead, somebody submits a form on your website.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, we had to create workflows. Maybe you do this once with an AI agent, and it can do this much more intelligently because it speaks a language that it understands. Okay, this is an exception. This is more to the left.
Mm-hmm.
This is more to the right. I'll give a different output.
Mm-hmm.
That is something very hard to code with rules and logic. And software is about rules and logic. AI is more about interpretation and reasoning. So there's a big shift happening there. And I can even imagine that, well, we know the example of Klarna, of course, who said, the founder or the CEO said, we're going to replace the software with AI, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if the market is there yet, but I see, and of course I'm a coder, so I try that stuff myself every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, not only what it can already do, and maybe it's not perfect yet, but the speed, like 6 months before, it couldn't do it, and now it can, but in a way that is really so powerful. So where will we be in 6 months from now? And this is what I see happening. So I think smaller teams can achieve a lot more. One of the things that I hear a lot from Silicon Valley contacts is that they say, I used to have 100, people company. I have a new startup. I'm running it with 20 people now only. And the rest is AI agents. And it's not to replace people. That's not the purpose. Absolutely not. But they are so powerful, they can do a lot of other stuff. And the people can focus more on what does the customer really want and the strategic stuff. It's scary, it's daunting, it's liberating at the same time. It's confusing.
all rolled up into one.
100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I like what you said really at the beginning there, understanding the customer. And if we as organizations don't actually understand the customer, then we can't actually leverage or get the most out of, AI or AI agents, because we feed them with information and for them to do a certain action to service our customer. But if we don't understand, then we'll feed them with the incorrect data or action and so on.
Yes.
Just touch on that a little bit, because I think knowing your customer is it's a thing that's talked about a lot, but it's sometimes just not really done.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's not done because we're so preoccupied with, implementing software. And so often I say, don't implement software anymore. Stop doing that. Implement business cases. And at the business schools and universities, what we do, we work with those people. Those are seasoned marketers. Those are people doing post-bachelor, post-master type of thing.
Mhm.
So these people are like managers and already 20 years in their job.
Mhm.
We do these plans, these business cases from a customer perspective. And the results are amazing. So I've been doing it for the past 5 years.
Mhm.
Over 50 cases. And the average return is that they ask management or the board $1 and they can give 16 back on average.
Mhm.
And this is B2B, B2C, charity, energy, fuel companies to consumer goods to whatever.
Mhm.
And that's crazy. It's a crazy number. So
Mhm.
we have to really have to flip and change the game and from looking at the software can solve stuff for us, rather what can we solve for our customer using AI or software in general. I think that's the big shift happening, and I see some people getting a bit scared because now they have to try to understand the customer, and it's not that they don't want to, but it's a new thing. So like I said earlier, there's no more hiding.
And just before we close, what does knowing your customer look like? Is it, looking at trend data? Is it going out and asking your customer, what do you want? Is it, what exactly does that look like, so that, everyone understands, okay, this is what know your customer means and what I need to do to therefore reap the benefits of technology?
The thing is that I think with LLMs, what they do really well is they can capture the intent. If you write a prompt, it often says, or sometimes says, listen, this is what you ask for, but probably you mean this and that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I'm talking about. And that is something we haven't accomplished with MarTech so far. And the LLMs are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, you can then reverse engineer. It's capturing the intent.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, intent is almost a sacred word because that's the core of every dialogue between human beings or a brand and a buyer, a seller and a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So intent, capturing that intent is so important. And right now it's poorly captured in cookies in your browser. And then we try as sellers to capture that and translate it into our data warehouse. And I'm not saying we're not good at it. It's amazing what we can do already.
Mm-hmm.
But with LLMs, you can capture that much better. And one of the things we haven't been capturing really well because of the complexity is intelligence from content interactions. So if I click on something and I hit, I'm searching for a word on Google, then enter your website.
Mm-hmm.
You can see, what search words were used.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I click then? Do I come back? Based on only content, on words, you can already tell if people are what their intent is, at which stage they are in which journey for which product.
Mm-hmm.
We hardly use that, and it's because it's hard to compute, it's hard to capture. With LLMs, that kind of stuff becomes easier. Now combine that with your data warehouse data, like, but this person has been at these touch points because we do ID stitching.
Mm-hmm.
Probably we need to come back with this proposal because it's the real intent. Ultimately, we'll come back with an answer where the customer goes like, oh, I was looking for this, but this brand knows me. Actually, I was looking for that. That's even better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then we're in a good place. And I think with AI, we can make that, happen or more feasible.
Wow. The future is super exciting. And this conversation has been so interesting, so eye-opening. Thank you so much for all of this. I think we'll have to have you back because I think there's still a lot more that we can talk about. But before we go, please tell the viewers and listeners where they can find you if they want more information on this, really practical, extensive research that you've done?
There are two ways. Just go to martechtribe.com, my website. There's a part about research, blogs. And the other way is my LinkedIn profile, my personal one, Frans Riemersma. And there I post regularly about this research. And what I will do in the near future is post more and more about what is specific for specific industries, because we now landed at that point that we can drill down. There are more companies that are interested into specific industry insights and MarTech. And there are so many differences across these industries. So that's what I will publish about in the coming years, I guess.
Cool. We can't wait. Thank you so much again, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Fiona, for having me, and I love the podcast. Thank you.